People often say that you can judge a person's character by how they treat the janitor, but no one cared about that when Nancy Walker, in her old uniform and faded red shirt, pushed her cleaning car through the shiny doors of Titan Industries, one of the most powerful corporations in New York. With her hair neatly tied back, head bowed and hands calloused from years of hard labor, Nancy became invisible to the managers and employees who were bustling around in their high-end suits. They walked past her without a greeting or a glance. The whole building was buzzing with activity as directors and employees hurried to meeting rooms, preparing for important meetings. Nancy walked through the gleaming hallways, her shoes making soft sounds on the meticulously polished floors. The red shirt she wore, though old and faded over time, stood out amidst the luxurious surroundings of the building. But no one noticed to them. Nancy was simply part of the environment. Like the tables, chairs, or floors she cleaned daily. She was the one who cleaned up the messes. They left behind nothing special. Nancy had been working at Titan Industries for many years. She was familiar with every corner of the building, from the lavish boardrooms on the top floor to the storage rooms where forgotten things were left behind. Every day, she silently observed the powerful people passing by, none of whom bothered to look at her. They were too engrossed in their meetings and big decisions, while Nancy simply did her job quietly and diligently. But no one knew that Nancy Walker, the woman in the faded red shirt, was not just an ordinary cleaning lady. She had been watching everything, every small detail, every glance, and every behavior of the people in the company. She knew how they treated each other, how they operated and made decisions. And she knew that soon everything would change completely. That Tuesday morning seemed like any other. Nancy entered the large boardroom on the top floor to clean before the important meeting. Greg Summers, one of the senior managers known for his arrogance, walked into the room with his colleagues. When he saw Nancy cleaning the windows, Greg did not miss the chance to mock her. "Make sure you clean thoroughly, Nancy," he sneered. "Some of us have a very important meeting here, so do not ruin our morning with any smudges." Greg did not even look directly at Nancy as he spoke, dismissing her with a voice full of disdain, as if she was not worth his attention. Greg's colleagues burst into laughter, praising his cruel humor. To them, Nancy was just a cleaner, nothing more. They did not realize that their words were not just hurtful, but were marking a huge mistake they would soon pay for. And Nancy continued cleaning the window, with her calloused hands, her eyes calm, despite Greg's sneers. In her heart she had grown used to such words. Over the years at Titan Industries, she had witnessed countless times the scorn from people like Greg, smug managers who saw themselves as the center of everything. and never recognized the value of others. She always maintained a quiet and humble demeanor, as if nothing could shake her. But inside, Nancy remembered everything. David Harris, another senior manager at Titan, was notorious for his arrogance and difficult personality. To him, Nancy was just part of the building, like the glass walls she cleaned, a tool unworthy of attention. He considered himself the center of attention and felt entitled to look down on those in lower positions. Today, as on many other occasions, he threw out a snide remark. "It's not please this time. Do not leave any streaks. We've got a big meeting coming up. Do not disturb us." The words were delivered with a condescending glance and a half smile, causing David's colleagues to laugh heartily. They did not care how Nancy felt, because in their eyes, she was just a cleaner, someone who never had a chance to speak up or fight back. Nancy just nodded gently, as if the words did not touch her. She continued her work, her skilled hands familiar with wiping away the dirt, making the window shine for Nancy. This was just a small part of her daily tasks. But her silence was not a sign of weakness. It was the patience of a woman who had seen and experienced too much. Behind the glass door Nancy was cleaning, a group of other managers walked by, each busy with their own work, none of them bothering to pay attention to her. In their eyes, she was just part of the space, existing to clean up the messes they created. They often walked past her without a word of thanks or a kind look, and Nancy never complained. She continued her work with quiet professionalism, but her eyes always watched. She had seen it all. How managers like David treated their subordinates. Mocking, belittling, and sometimes abusing their power to assert their superiority. But what David and others did not realize was that Nancy knew far more than they thought. She had witnessed every behavior, every secret conversation, not just harmless jokes, but decisions that had life-altering consequences. For others, she knew all the dark corners of Titan Industries, things the directors and employees never thought a cleaner could understand so well. David's mocking laughter and his colleagues' cruel laughter echoed in the room, but Nancy did not respond. Instead, she remained silent, like a ghost among the shining surfaces of Titan. But deep inside, she knew that the day her silence would end was approaching. David Harris had no idea that his disdainful words would be the biggest mistake of his career. In a short time, he would no longer be in those important meetings, no longer sitting in the powerful chairs he so desperately wanted to hold on to. His arrogance and pride would shatter as quickly as he had ignored and mocked Nancy, because what David and his colleagues did not know was that Nancy Walker, the woman in the faded red shirt, was not just an ordinary cleaner. Nancy had more power than they imagined, and soon they would understand that clearly when Nancy decided she would no longer stand still, but instead turn the tables, taking control in a way they never saw coming. By that time, David's laughter would stop, while David Harris's mocking laughter and his colleagues continued to echo. In the luxurious room, there was one person who did not join in. Emma Brown, a new hire fresh out of a prestigious business school, stood quietly observing from a distance. She had only been at a Titan Industries for a few weeks, but had already noticed something. The company's atmosphere was filled with arrogance, especially from senior managers like David. Those at the top of the power ladder seemed to forget that beneath them there were people making equally important contributions. Emma could not help but notice Nancy Walker, the woman she often saw, quietly pushing her cleaning cart through the hallways. Unlike everyone else, Emma never saw Nancy as invisible. From her very first day, she had noticed how Nancy moved through the building, with a strange calm, her sharp eyes seeming to take in every small detail that others easily overlooked. Though Nancy wore a faded red shirt and carried herself with humility, Emma sensed there was something different about her. Nancy did not seem like an ordinary cleaner. Beneath that exterior there appeared to be a hidden confidence and intelligence, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Once while walking down the hallway, Emma caught Nancy's gaze. It was not the look of someone just doing their cleaning job. Nancy's eyes gleamed with a knowledge and insight that Emma could not mistake. In that brief moment, Emma felt as though Nancy knew everything happening in the company, the good and the bad. Since that the moment, Emma could not stop paying attention to Nancy. Whenever she was within her sight, that day when David Harris made his snide remark, and everyone laughed at Nancy, Emma could not help but think, how can they be so disrespectful to someone like that? She watched how Nancy did not react, continuing her work as if nothing had happened. It only made Emma more curious. It seemed as though Nancy had an inner strength that people like David completely overlooked. Her calm, her patience, and her meticulous attention to every small detail made Emma believe that Nancy was far from an ordinary cleaner. Emma had heard that you could judge a person by how they treated those in lower positions, and in her eyes David Harris and his colleagues had revealed their true nature. The arrogance was displayed in every word, every sneering smile. They were so preoccupied with their own power and the grand decisions they believed to be important, that they forgot it was people like Nancy who kept this massive machine running smoothly every day. But perhaps Emma thought they would soon realize the truth. She felt a change was coming, a storm brewing within Titan Industries, and Nancy Walker seemed to be at the center of it. From the way she moved through the hallways, The way she quietly observed everything around her. Emma sensed that Nancy would not remain behind the scenes forever. She wondered what Nancy was waiting for, and when the truth would finally come to light. That day, as Emma returned to her desk, she could not take her eyes off Nancy, who was still quietly cleaning the boardroom. Nancy did not say a word, but Emma knew that beneath that calm exterior lay a great story yet to be told. A story that could change the entire dynamic of Titan Industries, and perhaps the lives of everyone working there, including her own. Feeling as though she was standing on the edge of something monumental, Emma decided she would continue watching everything closely. Something was about to happen, and she wanted to make sure she did not miss a single detail. Nancy Walker might be the woman in the faded red shirt, but to Emma, she was the key to the major changes to come. And Emma was certain that when the truth finally emerged, people like David Harris would not be laughing anymore. That afternoon, the atmosphere at Titan Industries grew more tense than ever. Employees were rushing to finish their work, preparing for an important meeting. It was the annual review, where all the senior leaders of the company would present results and future strategies. In front of T.R. Robert Mason, the CEO of Titan Industries. Mason was a well-known figure in the business world, famous for his tough and decisive leadership style. His presence not only amazed the employees, but also made the company's atmosphere more formal and urgent. Mason had flown from Los Angeles to New York just for this meeting. For senior managers like David Harris and his colleagues, this was the most important time of the year. Everyone was anxiously preparing, adjusting thick stacks of documents, arranging charts and perfecting business reports. They all understood that this meeting could determine their careers at Titan Industries. Nancy was still there in the large boardroom, where the review was about to take place. Continuing her cleaning work, she still wore her faded red shirt as always, and pushed her cleaning cart through the rows of chairs, preparing for the important meeting. Outside the room, the sound of directors' and managers' footsteps echoed, reflecting their urgency and nervousness. When the boardroom doors opened, Robert Mason entered with an aura of power and confidence. He wore a luxurious gray suit, perfectly tailored, his sharp eyes scanning the room, inspecting every detail. Everyone fell silent as Mason appeared, no one daring to utter a word. All eyes were on him, showing a mix of respect and fear. Robert Mason stood at the center of the boardroom, his hand resting on the large wooden table, then looked around as if evaluating not just the space, but the people sitting before him. But suddenly his gaze stopped in the corner of the room, where Nancy Walker was quietly standing, with her familiar cleaning tools Unlike the others, Robert Mason did not ignore Nancy. Instead, something unexpected happened. He smiled a warm and knowing smile and said, "Nancy, I think it's time, is not it?" The entire room seemed to freeze for a moment. The senior directors, who had just been brimming with confidence over the reports on the table, now sat in confusion, not understanding what was happening. Murmurs began to rise. Everyone was wondering why the most powerful CEO in the company suddenly addressed the cleaning woman they had barely ever noticed. David Harris, who just hours earlier had smeared at Nancy, now sat frozen, his face tense. The smug smile that usually adorned his face had vanished. He could not comprehend why the CEO was smiling and talking to the woman he had despised for so long. Not just David, everyone in the room was stunned, their eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion as they turned toward Nancy. Nancy slowly put down the rag she was holding. Her movements were deliberate, but there was a strange confidence in them. She lifted her head for the first time, no longer bowing down, and walked to the center of the room, in the gaze of everyone from a humble cleaning lady. Nancy now seemed to wear a different aura, one of power that no one could have predicted. Emma Brown, standing at the back of the room, felt a great wave approaching. Her heart raced as she realized that this moment was not a coincidence. This was the moment Nancy had been waiting for, and she knew she was about to witness something extremely important. Robert Mason smiled, looking at all the directors in the room calmly. And then he announced, "I would like to introduce you all to Titan Industries' main shareholder, Nancy Walker." Silence enveloped the room. The breath of everyone seemed to be held, and then the room erupted into whispers of shock. Wide eyes, astonished faces. No one could believe what they had just heard. Nancy Walker, the woman they had ignored, belittled for so many years, was actually the largest shareholder of the company. The senior directors, the people who had wielded so much power, now sat frozen, too shocked to speak. David Harris sat silently, unable to move. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on Nancy, as if she were a ghost from his past. Haunting him, he released that everything he had thought about Nancy was completely wrong. Nancy, the woman in the faded red shirt, was not just a nameless cleaner. She was the one who held the fate of Titan Industries in her hands. The room was full of astonishment, and Nancy Walker, the woman who had been looked down upon, now stood there with pride and authority. The mocking laughter, the sneers of the past had now vanished. Nancy had risen and was ready to change everything. And this was just the beginning. Nancy Walker, with a look of power and calm, stood before all the senior directors of Titan Industries. No longer the quiet woman, hidden behind her cleaning duties. She now stood at the center of attention. All eyes were on her, filled with astonishment and disbelief at what had just unfolded. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. No one daring to move. Robert Mason's words still echoed in their minds. Titan Industries' main shareholder, Nancy Walker. That declaration had changed the entire atmosphere in the room, overturning everything they had once thought. Nancy took a deep breath, then began speaking, her voice calm but full of strength. For many years, Nancy said, her eyes sweeping across the room, I've watched how you've run this company. I have not just sat behind a desk in a fancy office, but I've walked through every hallway, every boardroom, and seen everything that's been going on. You thought I was just an invisible cleaner, but in reality, I've been silently observing everything. The room seemed to be drawn into every word she said. No one dared to interrupt. David Harris, who had earlier mocked and belittled Nancy, sat frozen, his eyes wide and his face as pale as a sheet. All the arrogance and pride that usually filled him had vanished, replaced with fear and utter confusion. He could not believe that the woman he had always dismissed had such great power. Nancy continued, her voice sharp and determined. I've seen how you treat the employees beneath you, how you disregard their dedication and hard work. You've only cared about profits, but you've forgotten the most important element of the people. You've created a toxic culture where arrogance and contempt overshadow respect and collaboration. But from today that will change. Nancy's eyes locked onto each person in the room, and as she spoke, every director felt the shift in the air. She was no longer the woman with a mop and rag. She was the woman with real power. And now she had decided to use that power to change Titan Industries completely. For years she continued, I've been buying up pieces of this company, little by little, and now I'm the majority shareholder of Titan Industries. That means from today, I will decide how this company is run. Nancy's words cut through the silence. Like a sharp blade, the directors began whispering, but none of them dared to voice any objections. They knew Nancy held their futures in her hands. A few started to worry, not just because of her words, but because they realized they had underestimated and belittled the most powerful person in the company. Without knowing it, Emma Brown, standing in the back of the room, felt the undercurrent of change. Her heart raced as she watched Nancy rise and speak the truth. Emma understood that this was a historic moment, not just for Titan Industries, but for everyone who would ever work there. Nancy was not just an ordinary woman. She was the one who had built the company's success from things others could not see. Nancy turned to face Robert Mason, who was silently standing beside her, and continued, Robert and I have worked together for a long time. He's the only one in this leadership team who understands that a company is not just built on profits, but on the loyalty and dedication of its people. Robert Mason nodded his smile, showing that he fully agreed with everything Nancy was saying. He was not just a powerful CEO. He was also a man with vision, a person who had trusted Nancy from the beginning and worked with her to plan for this moment. Nancy scanned the room once more, and this time her eyes focused on David Harris Mallam, who was sitting frozen in place. She spoke slowly, her voice cold and resolute. "David, do you remember what you said to me this morning? Do you remember the mocking, condescending words you threw at me while I was just doing my job?" David was speechless, his face pale. He did not dare look Nancy in the eye, knowing full well that what was coming would not be easy for him. Nancy stepped forward, standing face to face with David. She spoke with certainty and without mercy. "David Harris, you're fired, effective immediately." The room erupted with whispers of shock and disbelief. David sat there stunned, unable to believe what had just happened. In a matter of seconds, everything he had spent his life building, his career, his reputation, and his power vanished before his eyes. His colleagues, the ones he had once looked down on, now stared at him in shock, none daring to intervene. Nancy Walker, the woman David and others had once scorned, now stood taller than them all. She had not only proven that she held more power than anyone in the room, but also demonstrated that respect and kindness were values that should never be underestimated. "This is a wake-up call for all of you," Nancy said, her voice ringing out like a strong declaration. "If you do not change, if you do not start valuing people, this will not be the last firing." Nancy's words hung in the air, like a warning to the entire leadership of Titan Industries. Their world had changed forever, and Nancy Walker, the woman in the faded red shirt, was the one who made the change. The room was completely silent. After Nancy's declaration, everyone's breath seemed to be held, and they all stared at Nancy with a mix of respect and confusion. No one could believe that the woman they had once looked down on, the one who had quietly cleaned their meeting rooms and hallways for years, was now the one holding the ultimate power. But more than that, the changes to come would not stop with David Harris's firing. This was only the beginning. Nancy stood tall, her sharp eyes scanning each person in the room, as if she could read their thoughts. Everyone felt an invisible pressure, as their future at her Titan Industries now depended on her. Nancy's voice echoed through the room once more, calm but powerful. "This company will no longer be the same as it was. You've all been used to thinking only about profits, about numbers on paper, forgetting about the people who actually run it. You've treated the employees beneath you as tools to achieve your goals. and you've treated them as though they had no value. But that will no longer be accepted. The room was filled with uneasy glances, some beginning to worry about their positions. They had been accustomed to leading with power and control without a second thought to how their subordinates felt. But now Nancy was starting a revolution that would change the entire culture of Titan Industries, and they understood that if they did not adapt, their future in the company would be uncertain. Nancy continued, "I've seen this arrogance grow over the years. I've watched how you've treated the hard-working employees who have given their all for this company, but have never received the respect they deserve. You've built a company where only those at the top are valued, while everyone else is disregarded. But today that changes, and I will make sure of it." Nancy's gaze swept across the room again, each manager feeling the weight of her words. She was no longer the invisible woman behind the cleaning cart. She was a true leader, someone who had silently observed and understood every corner of the company. David Harris was the first. "But if any of you continue with the same attitude, belittling your employees, prioritizing yourself over everything, you will soon face the same fate as him. I'm not here to criticize you, but I am here to warn you. If you do not change, I will change you." The room was so quiet. You could hear the rapid heartbeats of some people. They had been so used to overpowering others, and now they were faced with the consequences of that arrogance. A few managers exchanged glances, as if trying to figure out how to adjust to this new situation. But there were also those like Greg Summers, whose worry was evident on their faces. They knew that the culture Nancy was talking about was not just a problem of the past few months, but had been ingrained in the structure of Titan Industries for many years. Robert Marcino, the company's CEO, stood silently observing the entire event. He knew this moment had been in the making for a long time, and he fully trusted Nancy's leadership, because more than anyone, he understood that a company could not thrive based solely on financial figures. It had to be built on mutual respect and the ability to fully utilize the potential of every person in the organization. Robert nodded lightly, showing his strong agreement and support for Nancy. This did not escape the attention of the managers in the room. They began to realize that this change was not just coming from Nancy, but had the full backing of their CEO. There was no way out now. They had to face the change if they wanted to survive at Titan Industries. Nancy's voice softened but remained firm. "I'm not here to destroy this company on the contrary. I'm here to rebuild it from the mistakes we've made. This company needs to become a place where every employee, from the lowest to the highest level, feels respected and valued. No one here is just a number or a shadow. From today, Everyone will have the chance to prove their worth. Emma Brown, standing quietly at the back of the room, felt her heart race as she listened to Nancy's words. This was exactly what she had hoped for when she joined Titan Industries. She had seen the dark side of this company's culture in her short time there, but now she was witnessing a true revolution. And the woman in the faded red shirt, Nancy Walker, was the one leading it. And for those who cannot adapt, you can leave, Nancy said firmly, her eyes scanning the room. Titan Industries will not hesitate to part ways with those unwilling to change. This company will continue to exist, grow and succeed, but it will do so on a foundation of respect and collaboration, not arrogance and dictatorship. Nancy's words hung in the air, like a final warning to anyone still in doubt. But at the same time they offered an opportunity for renewal, for those willing to step into a new era. For Titan Industries, the old walls of power had begun to crumble, and now Nancy Walker stood at the top, leading the change everyone would remember. The room remained quiet, but in the air, everyone could feel that a new chapter had begun. After Nancy's powerful declarations, the boardroom of Titan Industries Malice remained filled with tense silence. Everyone sat frozen, trying to grasp what they had just heard. The change had been made clear. And one thing was certain: the days of freely abusing power, belittling others, were over. As the air remained thick with tension, Nancy paused, her eyes landing on the side Greg Summers, one of the senior managers, who had been with the company for many years, and who was also notorious for his arrogance, willing to do anything to climb up in his career. Greg had quietly observed the entire conversation, and now his eyes revealed a clear sense of worry. He knew he might be next. Greg's actions, not just similar to David's, but worse, had created many enemies within the company. And Nancy surely had noticed everything. Nancy slowly walked toward Greg, her eyes never leaving him. The room grew even more tense as everyone waited for her next move. Greg sat rigid, his hands trembling, but he tried to remain calm. However, the worry was evident in his eyes. Greg Summers, ma, Nancy said, her voice low but filled with power. Do you know why I'm calling your name? Greg stared at Nancy, trying to defend himself, but unable to find the words. After a moment of silence, he stammered, I do not understand, Nancy. I've worked hard for this company for many years. I do not understand why I'm being put in this position. Nancy's expression did not change, her gaze still sharp and cold. Hard work, you think? Stepping on others, belittling those without power is hard work. You think it's something to be proud of? Not respecting the people who have given their all for this company. Greg felt the weight of Nancy's words, and he understood that there was no way out now. He had become too used to using his power to overpower others, but this time that power could not protect him. Everyone in the room was watching him. Knowing that a big change was about to happen, Nancy continued, not giving Greg a chance to respond. You've disrespected your subordinates, created a toxic work environment, and thought that no one could stop you. But today that changes not just for David Harris, but for you as well, Greg Summers. You're fired effective immediately. The room immediately erupted in murmurs. The other directors could not believe their ears. Some looked completely surprised, while others seemed relieved that finally the abusive powers were being punished. Greg sat frozen in his chair, his face pale, his eyes wide in disbelief. He'd always thought of himself as untouchable, that his decisions and power could not be challenged. But now it had all crumbled in an instant. Greg's hands shook, gripping the armrest of his chair, trying to steady himself. But I can change, Nancy. Give me a chance, he stammered, his voice full of panic. Nancy shook her head without a trace of sympathy. Your chances are over, Greg. You've had many opportunities to change, but you ignored them all. Your actions have not only hurt others, but also affected the entire work environment here. Titan Industries no longer has room for people like you. Greg lowered his head, unable to speak. Everything he had built, his power, reputation and position in the company, had crumbled in an instant. Meanwhile, those around him looked at him with mixed expressions of surprise and satisfaction. Finally, someone like Greg was being held accountable for the harm he had caused. Nancy turned to face the rest of the boardroom, her eyes shining with determination. This is not just a lesson for David or Greg, but a warning for everyone in this room. The culture of this company will change. There will no longer be room for arrogance, belittling others, or abusing power. We will create a place where everyone, at every level, is respected and valued for their contributions. The room remained silent, but the atmosphere had changed. No longer was there the arrogance and entitlement of before. The remaining directors, though some looked worried, also felt that Nancy was doing the right thing. The invisible walls of self-satisfaction that they had built up over the years had begun to crumble, and a new chapter was about to begin for 5 Titan Industries. Nancy looked around the room once more, her eyes resting on each face. I'm not here to destroy anyone, but I will not allow a disrespectful work environment to continue. If you can adapt and change, there will be a place for you in the future of this company. If not, you can find another path. No one in the room dared to protest. They understood that Nancy now held full control, and they had to make a choice. Adapt to the new values she was bringing, or leave. A new wind of change had begun to blow through Titan Industries, and Nancy Walker was the one steering the ship. Emma Brown, standing at the back of the room, smiled slightly. She felt a strong sense of faith in the future. This revolution was not just changing the company. It was changing her own life as well. Nancy had proven that true power did not lie in outward authority, but in patience and determination to change things from the roots. Nancy turned to look at Robert Mason, who would quietly observe the entire event. He nodded at her, a smile of agreement on his face showing his complete support. Everything they had prepared for was now becoming a reality. Nancy had done what no one expected. She was not just cleaning the office. She was cleaning up the entire culture of Titan Industries. When Nancy Walker finished speaking, the room remained in tense silence. The eyes of the directors followed her, with a mix of astonishment and caution. Greg Summers had been dismissed, and the fate of those remaining now hung on every word Nancy spoke. They knew that nothing would be the same again, and once more, the fear of who would be next was clearer than ever. Nancy walked to the center of the room, pausing to look at each person. The once powerful directors now sat silently, avoiding her gaze, as if none of them wanted to meet her eyes. The room's atmosphere seemed to have frozen. The invisible walls of power they had once built had now completely collapsed. Everyone realized that Nancy was no longer the cleaner they could easily overlook. She had become a force to be reckoned with. "I hope," Nancy began, her voice calm but sharp, "that you all understand the message today. This is not just a warning for Greg or David, but for everyone sitting in this room. The culture you've developed at Titan Industries, the culture of disrespect and power abuse, will no longer exist." She paused, watching the tension grow on the faces of the directors. Some had started exchanging nervous glances, trying to assess the situation, while others quietly accepted that Nancy now held all the power. Titan Industries has grown tremendously in profits. But you've forgotten something important. The core value of a company is not just in its financial numbers, but in how it treats its people. Nancy continued, "The janitors, the secretaries, or anyone else you've looked down on, all of them are the foundation of the success you're enjoying. None of them are invisible." Nancy's words were not just a warning, but a deep reminder. The directors seemed to begin realizing that Nancy was not just trying to punish them. She was trying to correct the deep-seated mistakes within the company, bringing it back to the human values and respect that every organization should have. Emma Brown, standing quietly at the back of the room, felt her heart swell with admiration for Nancy. This was not just a simple speech. It was a call for reform, a chance for everyone in the company to change and be part of something better. Emma could feel that the future of Titan Industries was being reshaped right there, in that very moment, and she knew she wanted to be part of that change. Nancy paused, looking around the room again, making sure her message had sunk into everyone's minds. "I started from the bottom," Nancy said, her voice becoming softer, "but no less powerful. I worked in the jobs you never paid attention to. And in all that time I saw more than you. Thought you forgotten that the success of a company is not just built on the person at the top, but on everyone coming together. This is your chance to change, to be part of a new Titan, a company where every employee is valued, not just on paper, but in reality." The room remained silent. The directors understood that they had to choose, right then continue on their old path, with their arrogance and disregard for others, or adapt to the new culture Nancy was building. There was no third option. Nancy was no longer allowing ambiguity or compromise. Nancy turned to Robert Mason, who had been silently observing throughout the meeting. He had stood by her throughout this process, and now his gentle smile showed his unconditional support. Robert Mason was not just the CEO of Titan Industries. He was also the person behind the scenes, helping Nancy as she quietly acquired the company's shares and prepared for this moment of change. "Thank you, Robert," Nancy said, her voice softening with warmth. "You believed in me when no one else did. And because of that trust, we now have the chance to rebuild Titan the right way." Robert nodded, his eyes filled with respect for Nancy. "It was not hard to trust someone with your vision, Nancy. Titan Industries needs a leader who understands people, not just numbers, and you're that person." Robert's words resonated like a public acknowledgement of the transfer of power. Nancy had officially become the new leader of Titan Industries, the person who would take the company into a new era, with the values she had always believed in and carried out. Nancy looked around the room one last time, her eyes resting on each face, as if to confirm that they all understood her message. "You can stay and be part of the change, or you can leave. The choice is yours," Nancy said, her voice full of strength, but without pressure. "But Titan Industries will now be a place where everyone is respected, regardless of rank, and if you choose to stay, be ready for a future where our values will be put first." Nancy turned and walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind stunned and thoughtful eyes. The walls of old power had crumbled, and Nancy Walker, the woman they had once disregarded, in her faded red shirt, was now leading Titan Industries into a new future. Emma Brown quietly followed Nancy, feeling a renewed sense of faith. This was not just a company's transformation. It was a moment that would change her life and everyone else's forever. The values Nancy had set: respect, cooperation, patience, would now become the guiding principles for Titan Industries. Emma ran to catch up with Nancy in the hallway, then slowly said, "Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for everything." Nancy turned to look at Emma, a warm smile on her face. "You do not need to thank me. Emma, just remember one thing. Never let anyone tell you what your worth is. You define that yourself." Emma nodded, full of admiration and gratitude. She knew she had just witnessed a historic moment, not only for the company but for her own life. Nancy stepped outside the building, looking out at the vast city of New York. She had started from the lowest point and now stood at the top, but what made her most proud was not the power or the money. It was that she had proven that patience, persistence, and respect for others were the most important things in any organization. Titan Industries would never be the same again, and that was all thanks to Nancy Walker. Nancy stepped out of Titan Industries, the vast New York sky stretching out before her. The afternoon sun glinted off the skyscrapers. But today, the city's landscape seemed to hold special meaning. Nancy paused for a moment, taking a deep breath of fresh air, feeling the change around her. She had done what no one expected, not only changing Titan Industries from within, but also changing the entire course of her life. From a forgotten cleaner, she had become the leader of one of the largest companies in the industry. Emma Brown stepped out of the building after Nancy, her heart filled with admiration and respect. She looked at Nancy with a fierce belief that what she had just witnessed would change her life forever. Emma had not just learned how to run a company. She had learned how to respect people, no matter their position. Nancy smiled when she saw Emma approaching. "Have you thought it through?" Nancy asked, her voice full of affection. Emma nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Yes. I want to stay and help you change Titan. I believe in the values you're bringing to this company. That's why I joined Titan in the first place." Nancy looked at the young woman with encouragement. "You have a bright future ahead of you, Emma. I'm glad to see you choose this path. But remember, the path will not always be easy. There will be people who resist change, and there will be challenges. But if you stay true to what you believe is right, you'll overcome everything." Emma smiled, feeling deeply inspired by Nancy's words. She understood that change required time and patience, but Nancy had shown her that anyone, no matter where they started, could make a difference if they had enough determination and respect for themselves. Inside the building, the events that had unfolded in the boardroom still lingered like a quiet but powerful wave. The directors who had once held control and power were now facing an unchangeable reality. They had to adapt or leave. The walls of arrogance had crumbled, and Nancy had begun the process of restructuring the entire company from its roots. None of them would forget this day. The day a woman they had once looked down on had risen and become their leader. On the streets of New York, Nancy and Emma walked together. Nancy's steps were slow, but each step was full of determination and confidence. Emma walked beside her, a sign of the future, of the change they would bring together. At Titan Industries, Nancy stopped at an intersection, looking out at the busy traffic and the people rushing along the streets. She thought about the journey she had taken, from the days of cleaning quietly in the background, unnoticed, to the moment she stood before the senior directors and declared her power. She had not just changed her own life, but the lives of many others. She turned to Emma, speaking with sincerity. The most important thing, Emma, is never to let anyone underestimate your value. Each of us has our own strength. As long as we dare to believe in it and use it the right way, today is not just about me. It's about everyone who's ever been looked down upon. And now we're going to build a better future for Titan Industries together. Emma nodded, feeling every word of Nancy's like a precious lesson. She knew she was not just working for a company. She was contributing to a great mission, a change not just in structure, but in respect and human values. Nancy stepped forward, the sunlight shining on her face. The city of New York, with its towering buildings, was no longer just a symbol of power and success, but a place where anyone, no matter where they came from, could rise, if they had enough patience and determination. In Nancy's heart, she knew her journey was not over. There was still much to be done, many changes to make, but today she had proven that true strength did not lie in power. It lay in patience, respect, and the ability to create change. From the smallest things, and from today, Titan Industries would no longer be a place of arrogance and disregard. It would become a symbol of fairness, respect, and the ability to overcome all challenges. And it all started with a woman in a faded red shirt. A woman who did not just clean the office, but cleaned the toxic culture of the company. Nancy and Emma continued walking through the busy streets, their steps full of determination and hope. A new chapter of Titan Industries had begun, and they knew the future would be better, thanks to the courage and perseverance of people like Nancy Walker. That day, Titan Industries did not just change. It would forever remember the story of Nancy Walker, the woman who was once underestimated, but rose to take control of it all. Thank you for following Nancy Walker's inspiring journey. If you found this story interesting and meaningful, please hit like, share with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss out on more inspiring stories in the future. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next video.